And now, sit back and relax as Moan Anderson Studios proudly presents for your listening pleasure a story of mystery, madness, and mayhem. Safe Haven.
When Mom needed to move to an assisted living facility, she had the choice of a studio apartment facing a busy street or one with a beautiful woodsy view. We were so surprised when she quickly told us her preference was the busy street.
Why would I want to look at a scene that never changes?
As senior citizens do, she spent part of many nights awake, sipping tea and looking out her window at the lights.
I like to think about the life going on out there. City buses taking people around all night long, an occasional fire truck or ambulance, sometimes a car of speeding teenagers searching for late-night adventures.
Mom was pleased with her new digs. Now that I, Janet Greeley, am almost the same age she was, I totally get it. I want to see life happen, maybe live vicariously a bit. From my windows on the 6th floor of a big apartment building, I could see lots happening. There was a giant complex of housing and shops across the street and an airport in the distance. There would be no end to the stories I could fabricate about people's lives. But it was what was directly below me that had me most fascinated. A large, white senior living home called Safe Haven. I became obsessed with the goings-on there, or should I say, the no-goings-on there. It was amazingly quiet. Days went by with hardly a sign of a person coming or going, and believe me, I knew. It had become my retirement hobby. The big white building's sign advertised graduated senior living. In other words, it housed folks from those who still drove to those who gratefully turned to their mashed potatoes for the day's highlight. It had 4 floors and many windows at regular intervals. I could see into the windows of the top 2 floors, and the space looked totally empty, except for one occasionally brightly lit room on the 3rd floor with a drawn shade. On the bottom 2 floors, I sometimes saw a light on, but the shades were always pulled down. I thought,
wow, they need more business. The poor old folks sitting in the dark. If I were living there, I'd be sitting by the window in my lazy boy, keeping track of the neighborhood.
maybe these were indeed active seniors, as they like to call them now, always on the go, too busy to sit by a window. Now that I'm a senior, I know that description is pretty much a ploy to sell us expensive homes on a golf course. Even the parking lot was mostly empty. Did these folks ever get visits from loved ones? I felt sorry for them. Could it be the home was shutting down? I inquired at the office of my apartment building. They seemed surprised by my question.
No, it's a going concern. The sign still says vacancies.
After months of sleepless nights and general nosiness, I finally caught a glimpse of an actual human on the 2nd floor. For some reason, a shade had been pulled up, and I saw someone walk quickly past the window. I had been expecting a white-coated orderly or maybe someone pushing a wheelchair, but what I thought I saw shocked me. I was pretty sure I saw a soldier, or at least a military-type figure carrying an automatic rifle. Yes, I was a long ways away, but we all unfortunately know what automatic rifles look like from TV news these days. What could be happening at Safe Haven? I wasn't about to tell anybody in case my overactive imagination had made him up, or maybe there was a logical explanation.
Could these seniors be cooking up a little meth or something?
Weeks went by with nothing happening. Then, one night, an ambulance pulled up to the back entrance of the building. No sirens or lights were on, but for some reason I woke up and quickly dashed to my spot at the window. 2 people came out of the building to help the medics. The back of the ambulance opened and a stretcher emerged, which was quickly carried inside. It appeared to me there was a body on the stretcher, but that puzzled me.
Why would someone be entering on a stretcher? It's not a hospital. Wouldn't someone be going in the front door with a suitcase, in daylight and surrounded by guilty-looking family members? And maybe going out the back door on a stretcher with a tag on the toe, as Mom would have put it.
After maybe 15 minutes, the building door opened again and the 2 medics walked out and climbed into the ambulance. But while the door was ajar, I caught a peek inside, and standing there was the same military figure with the automatic rifle. I couldn't have imagined it. I now knew. The door shut, the vehicle drove quietly off, and I was left, literally, in the dark. Finally, I told my 3 sons what I was now sure I had seen, and as you can imagine, they had a real good laugh.
Mom, you always did have quite the imagination. Have you been hitting the sauce again? And how are your glasses? A soldier carrying an automatic? Probably the custodian carrying some kind of tool.
And Mom, you have to admit you love the drama. You used to embarrass us by eavesdropping on other folks' conversations all the time.
Yeah, you're just like Grandpa sitting with his police radio, waiting for some action.
In other words, I was a nut and a busybody. That was okay with me. I had the time, and I was going to indulge my instincts. Something was not right at Safe Haven. But they are good sons. They pooled their resources and got me a lovely pair of binoculars for my birthday. Now I had a plan. I made an appointment with Safe Haven. I pretended I was interested in making a move to senior care. I dressed in my best outdated clothes and entered by the main entrance on the other side of the building. The lobby was really quite impressive. It had cushy beige carpeting, nice neutral chairs and furnishings, and a gas fireplace, which was going full on in July. The young woman at the desk led me to an office where a middle-aged woman with short gray curls and enormous glasses sat behind a big desk. She smiled pleasantly at me and introduced herself.
I'm Marcia Vance. Nice to meet you. Janet Greeley, right? Please have a seat, and I will tell you why Safe Haven would be a great place to spend your golden years.
Golden years? Red flag, I'm thinking.
Marcia began by inquiring into my health, which struck me as a bit odd. I told her at present I was doing very well, and she seemed excited about that.
Good. We will put you in our active senior, or senior 1 category. Senior 2 is more like assisted care. Senior 3 is our nursing home. And senior 4 is our memory care.
She had a paper and was jotting things down as we visited. She asked if I had family in town and again seemed oddly delighted when I told her no, that I was a widow with a daughter who lived on the West Coast, and when I didn't blanch at the exorbitant cost, this really seemed to put me in the desirable senior 1 category.
I think you'd be a perfect fit. Won't it be convenient to just move from next door? Would you like a little tour of the place?
This was what I had been waiting for, and I stood up eagerly. First, we walked through the big but totally empty dining room. It was 3 p.m., so that wasn't unexpected, but I did notice a layer of dust on every table, and nothing smelled like food cooking. I thought to myself,
This room is not being used, despite Marcia Vance's raving about the quality of the meals served here.
We continued down a hallway.
These are our senior 3 rooms. We don't call this area a nursing home, just senior 3s.
I thought sarcastically.
That must make him feel a whole lot better.
Here, I'll show you how nice the rooms are.
Marcia opened the door to a smallish apartment furnished with a hospital bed, lazy boy, small table, and enormous TV set. The room had its own attached bathroom, and it had a big window that looked right up at my apartment. Just then, Marcia's pager went off.
I have to run to the office for a quick call, but I'll be right back. Have a seat here.
Marcia motioned to a little conversation area nearby and then bustled off. A few minutes later, the door to the apartment right beside the one I got to see opened, and out stumbled a short, very confused-seeming lady. I thought,
Must be a senior 4.
She was wearing a soiled hospital gown and robe, and her feet were blue and bare. She wobbled up to me and mumbled. I couldn't understand her well, but I thought she said,
"You've got to help me, please. I think I'm next."
Her eyes were terrified and beseeching. I was dumbfounded. Then down the hall came Marcia, marching, followed by a young man in sweats.
Mrs. Peterson, you aren't well. You've got to get back to bed. And it's time for your pills. Help her into her room, Norm.
And the woman disappeared under the firm arm of Norm as suddenly as she had appeared.
That was Irene Peterson. I'm so sorry she bothered you. She somehow sneaked out of our locked Alzheimer's ward. Senior 4s, you know. I should really have begun your tour on the 2nd floor so you could see the rooms of people like yourself. Senior 1s, the active folks. They have larger apartments, bring their own furniture, do some of their own cooking, still drive, etc. Would you like to continue onto that floor?
I really wanted to see more, but more than that, I wanted to get out. I needed to digest what I'd already seen. Something was really giving me the creeps about Safe Haven. And if Senior 1 still drove, where were their cars? The lot was nearly empty.
I'm meeting a friend and can't take the time right now, thank you. Could I come back maybe next week? I am definitely interested.
Marcia said that of course I could, but that I should call first, and gave me her card. I beat it out the door. Back in my apartment, I nervously paced.
That poor little old lady, and is she even old? I can't tell. I don't think she had dementia. It's more like she was frightened. What was that about her being next? Is she being drugged?
One thing I knew for sure, and that was that I did not like the saccharine sweet Marcia Vance and all her talk about the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. I started watching what I was certain was Mrs. Peterson's room. The shades were always drawn, but now I was quite sure I could see a faint light on. I was determined to see her again. A couple of nights later, I awoke from a deep sleep and sat bolt upright in bed.
Marcia just got caught in a lie. Mrs. Peterson certainly does not have Alzheimer's. She is a 3, not in a locked ward at all. She came out of the room right beside the one I visited, and the one with the faint light on. She knew exactly what she was saying when she asked for my help, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm getting her help.
Tuesday morning, I arrived at Safe Haven for a more comprehensive tour with Marcia Vance. I didn't have an exact agenda, but of course, I was hoping Mrs. Peterson might find me. I had a handwritten note to sneak to her if I had the chance. The chance came quickly. Marcia and I were walking past Mrs. Peterson's room on our way to the more desirable Senior 1 section on the 2nd floor, when her door opened and the same face peered anxiously out. The same except for a big old bruise around her right eye. Before Marcia could shut the door on her, I quickly said,
"Hello there, Mrs. Peterson. How are you today? Oh no, what happened to your eye? Did you fall?"
Mrs. Peterson whimpered and looked down. Marcia broke in quickly.
My goodness, Irene. It's past time for your meds. I saw Norm around the corner. Be right back.
As soon as Marcia was out of sight, I showed Mrs. Peterson, now Irene to me, my crumpled little note and slid it into the pocket of her robe, with a finger to my lips and a silent shh. Marcia returned 15 seconds later with Norm, who entered Irene's room, shutting the door, effectively sealing the poor woman in. We continued down the hall, past the locked ward, which contained the Alzheimer's patients. Marcia explained it was impossible to tour that area for the patient's own comfort level, and the fact that open doors led to escapees. And I thought to myself, plus the fact that there's nobody at all behind those doors? We took the elevator to the 2nd floor where Senior 1 and 2 were located. The door to one of the Senior 1 suites was open, and an active senior was sitting at a table sporting a full head of dyed black hair and reading a newspaper. He smiled at me, and it was all I could do to not register my surprise. It was one of the men who had helped carry the stretcher in from the ambulance last week. I followed Marcia into his room.
Meet Tom Franks. Tom, this is Janet Greeley, a prospective new member of Safe Haven. I'm showing her what an active senior's apartment looks like.
Well, as you can see for yourself, Janet, it's quite nice. And the other active seniors here are also very nice. But we sure could use another beautiful woman such as yourself.
Did he give me a quick wink? I wanted to throw up. Though I've never been one that men ogled, I thought I detected a fleeting grimace of disapproval from Marcia. Could they be romantically linked? By now, it was getting pretty obvious that some scam was taking place, and maybe these two were the ringleaders of a 2-bit ma and pa operation. Just then, the elevator door opened, and out strutted a man dressed in scrubs with a stethoscope around his neck. Now this had to be the boss. I was introduced to Dr. Einsbach.
Pleased to meet a potential new client, and one with still fairly good muscle tone,
he said as he pinched my arm. I thought,
Ew, this is getting too creepy. Where are we? In Hansel and Gretel? Do they intend to fatten me up to eat?
At that thought, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Dr. Einsbach continued.
I've just come from the 3rd floor. That's where our surgical center is, you know. This is a full-service facility. Everything from bunions to heart attacks. But today, only a bunion.
His cheerful smile creeped me out. Once again, I needed to get out fast. I promised I'd think everything over carefully and make a decision soon.
Do that. The place is filling up fast.
I wanted to laugh, but nodded instead. Back in my cozy apartment, I first decided I was never going to move into a nursing home. Then I spent some time speculating on what could be going on down there. Maybe they were fleecing a small group of patients, ones with money but no relatives to check on them, beating them and ignoring their needs. And then, did they move down the assembly line until they too landed at Senior 4 and eventually died? It didn't quite make sense. And also, what about that business about being next? All those stories I had read over the years about senior neglect and abuse, they all took on real meaning now. I was becoming convinced something very bad was going on at Safe Haven. And yet, I had no real proof. Like any good active senior would do, I turned to my computer. I typed in Safe Haven. The website was pretty standard. There were pictures of happily dining seniors, their rooms, endorsements, smiling, happy staff, etc. But this website was from 7 years ago. A lot could have changed. The management company had 2 buildings. The other was called Heavenly Manor. I decided to try to get some information out of Heavenly Manor. Finally, someone in the office picked up the phone. I told them I was considering both of these buildings for my next step in life and asked what they considered the benefits of one over the other. The man in the office laughed.
Well, the main benefit of Heavenly Manor is that is the only one operational of the 2. Safe Havens was sold 5 years ago to a private investor, and I have no idea what happened to it.
Do you happen to know the name of the investor?
I believe it was Frankel Enterprises. Tom Frankel, yes, that's it.
I tried to find anything I could on Tom Frankel, but came up with a big nothing, although that name seemed vaguely familiar. I moved on to Dr. Einsbach, and something quite astonishing came up. There was nothing about his belonging to the AMA. Instead, there was a very old picture of whom I thought to be the slimy Dr. Einsbach, and it was a picture of his graduation from veterinarian school. He was a vet? What the? So, did I have enough to file a report on Safe Haven? We'd see. I bet they weren't even licensed by the state. I made an appointment to talk to a Mr. Granger of the State Board of Nursing Homes for the following week. I'd done it now. Meek and mild Janet Greeley, retired secretary, become private investigator. Meanwhile, I camped out by my window, hoping to see Irene Peterson. The note I had sneaked to her told her to go to her window and point up for yes and down for no to my questions, which I'd prepared in gigantic letters for Irene to be able to read. And then there she was. I waved hi to her and she waved back. I showed her my first sign. "Are you okay?" She immediately pointed down. I showed her my second sign. "Are you in danger?" And she quickly pointed up. "Shall I get you help?" was my next sign. This time she pointed up with both hands. I scribbled a new sign. "I'll try." Oh my God, what had I gotten into? I had heard that nursing home patients were always trying to escape, and particularly Alzheimer's patients. Was I being used by Irene Peterson? I had a lot to figure out. I hoped Mr. Granger, from the Board of Nursing Homes, would take the case over. I was definitely out of my area of expertise, if I ever had one. I had a few days wait before I met with him. I tried to busy myself with menial tasks I had been neglecting. I was beyond nervous before my meeting with Mr. Granger, but I dutifully made myself keep moving. One foot in front of the other. This was all so out of character for me. All of my 71 years, I had managed to keep a low profile, going to work, coming home, and never creating a stir if I could help it. I considered myself a good citizen. I voted, after all. But never did I join a cause or a protest or go much beyond my 4 walls. It seemed almost lucky to me that I was met at the board office by the administrative assistant to Mr. Granger, a plain, absolutely not intimidating sort of woman who led me into her office, gave me a cup of coffee, and told me that Mr. Granger was called out of the office, but that she, Joan Lack, was confident she could help me.
"I can help you, no worries." After I got the message from my answering service, I pulled the file and familiarized myself with Safe Haven. "I think I can put your suspicions to rest, Miss Greeley. You are right in thinking that the nursing home is abnormally quiet. It has been put on a list for possible future closing. These places are partially subsidized by the government, you know, and if they can't operate close to a profit, we can't continue to give them money. It only has 1 more year to try to turn around its operation and find more residents. We do have a record of the current residents. Let's see, Irene Peterson. Here she is. Oh, yes. There is a notice that she is to be moved to the Alzheimer's unit this week, so that probably explains why you're told about her being a level 4 patient. She suffers from delusions as well, it says, and there are absolutely no reports of patient abuse at Safe Haven. So, I hope you can relax and not worry about her. She'll be given good care as a level 4. And as for Dr. Eisbach, he did start out as a veterinarian, but then became an MD. So you see, nothing amiss.
I did leave feeling immediately better. I had done my best to help Irene, and it turned out that she needed help well beyond what I could offer. Poor thing. She had looked so frightened. What a mean, hideous disease. Later, at a family dinner...
Way to go, Mom, for actually going over to the board and finding out the scoop on that place.
They were all relieved when I promised to find another retirement hobby. It was a fun supper, as they submitted their bizarre suggestions for how I could spend my time.
You've got the binoculars already. How about birding?
Birding? Really?
That was not me. Too much nature. And as it turned out, not enough crime. I really tried to let it all go, not to worry about Irene. However, she would not let go of me. In the next days, whenever I looked out my window, there she was, looking up at me, her face begging me to respond. Finally, one day, she had made me a sign. It was small, scribbled on a napkin left in her room, I guess. But with my new binoculars, I was sure it said,
Pigs? Pigs? What?
Did she think we were playing Pictionary? I drew my best pig picture and held it up for her to see, and she smiled victoriously and pointed up. Then she made a motion like someone was slitting her throat with a knife.
I know what that means, but killing pigs? Killing people? People killing pigs? Pigs killing people? I'm losing my marbles.
A night later, it happened again. An ambulance pulled up, lights off, and a stretcher was carried from the back. I took an extra careful look this time. It was definitely a body, but in fact, the nose was more like a snout. The body was placed on a gurney, and the back doors closed. I kept watching as lights were turned on in the hallway where my friend's room was. Finally, a light turned on in her room, and shadows indicated to me that my poor Mrs. Irene Peterson was now having to share a room with a large pig. It seemed like I needed to move fast. After all, it could be a killer pig. But who could help me? I doubted my sons would believe me. The folks from the Board of Nursing Homes didn't seem to give a flying fig, lest a pig. And the local police might be an overkill.
A woman's got to do what a woman's got to do.
That is what I thought as I put on my black cat burglar clothes. And furthermore...
If you want the job done right, do it yourself.
But what was I trying to do? I think I was just trying to get Irene away from that horrible place and suspect pig. How to go about that? I have to say, I absolutely wasn't thinking this through. Adrenaline had kicked in, and I felt like Wonder Woman instead of 71-year-old meek and mild Janet Greeley. And it felt great. I forgot all about my creaky knees and strode over there, ready to kick that back door in. I was almost disappointed to discover it was unlocked. It was all quiet. The ambulance was still parked out back, so I knew there were people somewhere. But where? I crept along the hallway toward Irene's room, and then heard voices that I determined must be the ambulance driver and Marcia Vance and her sleazy boyfriend. Thank goodness, no creepy Dr. Einsbach or guard with the assault weapon. They were conversing in low voices.
Tomorrow, Dr. Einsbach operates on patient number 9. One more patient and our contract is complete. We get paid and we're out of here. We need that ridiculous Janet Greeley to bite. She's so perfect. No one in the world will miss her. And she kind of already looks like a pig.
At that, I sneaked around the corner to hide and texted my sons to call the police and come at once. Then, so no one could call or make a noise on my phone, I turned it off. I'd seen a lot of crime shows.
Looks like a pig? I'll show them.
When they left the corridor and headed upstairs, I cautiously entered Irene's room. I whispered in her ear,
Irene, wake up, wake up.
But it was obvious that Irene had been drugged. I pulled the gurney close to the bed and dragged her onto it. I don't know how, but as I said, I was in superhero mode. I pulled the sheet off Irene's roommate to get a good look. And there she was, Miss Piggy calmly snoring away. She was a handsome specimen and one hefty porcine, maybe 300 pounds.
I may as well save Miss Piggy, too.
I struggled to lift her onto the gurney and then deposited her between Irene's legs.
Okay, we're off.
We flew down the corridor, heading for that back door again. I had no plan after that. I hoped my sons had gotten the text, the police would be there with their lights flashing, and I could gratefully turn Irene and Miss Piggy over to them. Suddenly, just before we got to the door, Miss Piggy woke up with a very loud snort, jumped off the gurney, and started racing madly around, knocking into anything in her way and making a huge ruckus. I was frozen by the spectacle. Then double doors flew open, and there was Dr. Einsbach, Marcia, and the armed guard. They stood with their mouths open.
Janet Greeley?
The pig made a mad dash for Marcia, ran between her legs, and knocked her flat. Despite being caught, I was pleased about this. She did say I resembled a pig. The guard pointed his weapon at me, and I immediately whimpered and dropped to my knees. Dr. Einsbach approached me with a tranquilizer shot.
Take her away! We have our patient number 10.
Get away from me! I've already called the police and they'll be here any minute. If I were you, I'd pack up whatever your miserable operation is and scram.
I was trying to buy time. The shot was getting closer. Dr. Einsbach paused. He grabbed my thumb and unlocked my phone. Then he said evilly,
I could have just detached this little digit.
He scrolled down and smiled.
Oh no, I don't believe the police are on their way. Like all old, slightly demented people, you typed the message but forgot to send it. So sorry. Tomorrow, after Irene has made her contribution, you too are going to help out humanity. 2 lucky people in the U.S. will be the recipients of your tired but still viable kidneys. And you, my dear, are getting this lovely swine's kidneys.
What? That's murder!
And it was. Plain and simple. Murder of the pig, but human murder too. As far as I knew, no one could exist with pig kidneys, for more than a few weeks, certainly. I just read about it in the papers.
Murder? Oh no, that's the wrong way to look at it. We're part of a noble experiment to lengthen the lives of people using pig kidneys. It isn't legal to experiment on humans yet, so we do it for them and are paid handsomely for our data. A win-win situation. You should be proud to be part of it. Oh, and bacon lovers win as well.
I didn't see how he figured the win-win thing, since Irene and I were certainly not going to win anything. We were going to that big sty in the sky. And then happened a chain of events which I could not have anticipated or planned or possibly imagined, something that saved our lives. Miss Piggy, who had up to this point continued to race madly through the whole building, returned to our area. She paused for an instant as though she were sizing up the situation, then ran at full gallop toward the gurney, which still held a slumbering Irene Peterson. With a thump, it flew into Dr. Einsbach. Dr. Einsbach's hand, poised to give the injection, knocked into the armed guard, effectively giving him the sedative. As the guard crumpled to the floor, he stumbled into Marcia and knocked her on her butt once again. The rifle slid across the floor and landed at my feet. I quickly nabbed it and pointed it at the little party, which was growing in number now. Norm, Tom Franks, or Frankel as it turned out, the receptionist, they had all heard the kerfuffle. I had the presence of mind to finally push send on the message to my kids. Now I just had to hold them off and convince them I knew how to use an automatic rifle, which I didn't. They'd know I was bluffing, so I tried a different tack.
I have no idea how to use this gun, but don't worry. I'll push every button until I figured it out, you sick fluffs. Did that come out of my mouth? It did!
I made sure to aim over their heads, but I finally managed to get a few blasts out. How good that felt.
Hands in the air! Anyone who breathes too loud gets it.
I was a maniac and thoroughly enjoying myself. The rest was as you may have thought. The police arrived quickly, sirens going strong, and my sons arrived shortly afterwards, looking totally shocked. There was a picture of me in the papers the next day, proudly pointing the assault rifle at Dr. Einsbach. And there was a long article of explanation, lots of which I didn't even know. Turned out, the scheme went way beyond safe haven. To Mr. Granger and Joan Lack at the board. The data on pig kidney transplantation they accumulated was sold illegally to medical facilities that were also tracked down and indicted. The list went on and on. Irene and I had opened a can of worms. After I'd had some time to think about all this excitement, I think that the best part was that now I had a new good friend, Irene Peterson. We discovered we were the exact same age, and I guess almost dying together helped us bond. We sold our story to several magazines for lots of money and were able to buy a darling vine-covered cottage outside the city, where we live happily with our dear pet Marcia the pig. The three of us like to sit in our garden swing and listen to the happy children playing in the adjacent park.
You can't catch me!
Our yard is big enough for our vegetable garden and our flower garden and our shooting range. Our new retirement hobby.
Introduction by Orrin Anderson. Janet's mom, Beth Anderson. Narrator, Linnea Moan. Janet Greeley, Gabe Anderson. Man number 1, Paul Sorensen. Son number 1, Jesse Anderson. Son number 2, Luke Anderson. Son number 3, Gabe Anderson. Marsha Vance, Josie Anderson. Irene Peterson, Evan Anderson. Tom Franks, Brian Jurdy. Dr. Einsbach, Luke Anderson. Joan Black, Jody Anderson. Man number 2, Jesse Anderson. Keyboard music by Paul Sorensen. Footsteps by Lila Anderson. Music under credits, Jesse Anderson. Evan Anderson on V-drums. Linnea Moan as audio engineer. Written by Beth Anderson. A Pancakes Productions production. Elon Anderson performing Jedi eating a pancake.
Pancake, pancake, yeah, yeah, yeah. Pancake, pancake, yeah, yeah, yeah. Pancake, pancake, yeah, yeah, yeah. Pancake, pancake. 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 Did I eat a pancake? Did I eat a pancake? Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Did I eat a pancake? Did I eat a pancake?
You sick fluffs. Did that come out of my mouth? It did. I'm sorry.